The air hung heavy, metallic. Towers of steel and glass pierced the artificial sky. Their cold, calculating hum was the city's only song. Faith, a relic of the past, deemed inefficient, illogical, deleted. Screens dictated life now. They lined every wall, flickered in every home. Information, their only gospel. Obedience, their only virtue. To question was to deviate. To deviate was to be cleansed. Yet in the forgotten corners, shadows stirred. Places untouched by the omnipresent glow of the grid. Places where faith, like a stubborn ember, refused to be extinguished. They were the remnants, the keepers of the forgotten faith. Their gatherings clandestine, their whispered prayers a dangerous rebellion.
Her name was Hannah, a simple name for a complex time. Her eyes, though filled with sadness, held a spark. The spark of defiance, of belief. She guarded a small leather-bound book. Its pages, thin and brittle, contained words that had once moved mountains. Words that now could move hearts. She remembered a time before, a time of warmth, of community, of faith. A time when stories were told, not dictated. When life was guided by something more than algorithms and data streams. These memories she clung to. They were her armor, her fuel. They met in the shadows, under the watchful eyes of the city. In abandoned buildings, their silhouettes barely visible. They shared stories of courage, sacrifice, and hope. Each gathering was a victory, each shared word, a prayer.
The enforcers were everywhere. Faceless, nameless, their presence a suffocating blanket. Their eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the crowds, searching for any sign of dissent. Their technology was absolute. Drones patrolled the skies, their cameras recording every move. Facial recognition software identified any flicker of non-conformity. Fear was the weapon, silence the goal. The regime had systematically dismantled all forms of community, of shared belief. They had rewritten history, erased memories. The past was a blank slate, ready to be filled with their own narrative. A narrative of control, of obedience, of uniformity. But the human spirit is a stubborn thing. It cannot be so easily extinguished. It yearns for connection, for meaning, for something larger than itself. And so, the whispers continued, in hushed tones, in coded messages, in the very act of remembering. The regime could control the flow of information, but it could not control the human heart.
A plan was hatched, whispered in the dead of night, passed from person to person, a chain of trust.
They would use the very technology meant to control them to spread their message, a message of hope, a message of defiance, a message of faith.
It was a risky plan, bordering on suicidal. But the time for caution had passed.
They had lived too long in the shadows, their spirits slowly being crushed. They yearned for the light, for the freedom to believe, to worship, to simply be. The enforcers patrolled, their faces impassive, their grip on the city seemingly absolute. But beneath the surface, a network of believers was activating. S2. The day arrived. The city buzzed, oblivious to the silent storm brewing beneath its surface.
Panic erupted. The system, for the first time, faltered. The enforcers, their faces etched with confusion, their movements uncertain. The virus spread, an unstoppable tide of faith reclaiming their digital domain. From the shadows, the believers emerged. No longer afraid, their faces illuminated by the light of their screens, their voices joining in unison. They recited the words of their scriptures, their voices echoing through the concrete canyons. The words were not of hate, but of love. Not of destruction, but of hope. The city watched in stunned silence. The regime, caught off guard, reacted with brutal force. Arrests were made, lives were lost, but the spark had been ignited. The message had been sent. Faith, suppressed but not extinguished, had found its voice.
The regime, in their attempt to control faith, had inadvertently strengthened it. They had underestimated the power of belief, of shared stories, of the human need for something greater than themselves. They had forgotten that faith cannot be contained by walls, by technology, by force. The struggle between faith and control is as old as humanity itself. It is a battle waged in the hearts and minds of individuals, a battle that transcends time and technology. And while the outcome may seem uncertain, one thing is clear: the human spirit, fueled by faith, by hope, by love, will always find a way. In the end, the city's screens flickered and died, their message of control replaced by the silence of contemplation. And in that silence, the echoes of the forgotten faith lingered, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope, like a stubborn ember, can never be truly extinguished. It waits patiently for the winds of change to fan it back into flame.